Hi everyone, it's Anne here. I will give everybody a little bit of time to join and then we will get started. Hi Wendy. Thanks, good to see you here. Thanks for the invitation. Happy to join. I've been enjoying the other speeches this week. I'm looking forward to catching up on a couple when they're posted to YouTube that I wasn't able to join live. Hi, good evening. Hi, everybody who's joining. We'll give a chance for a few more people to join and then we'll get started. All right, Wendy, if you're good, we'll go ahead and get started because I guess everybody can catch up on the replay if necessary. I'm Anne, and thanks to Wendy for inviting me to speak here. If you asked me 10 years ago where I would be, sitting here speaking to you from Germany about community or about parenting is not even something that would have made the list. But life is wonderfully unpredictable, and we're here now. So I'm here to talk a little bit about my parenting journey so far, as someone who's moved frequently and lives far from home and from family, and also as a parent to a child with a disability and some medical issues where I needed to find support and information, and I wasn't able to find it where I lived. And also how online communities can be a huge support in helping us parent in today's world. The world has changed dramatically, but the old saying's still true that it takes a village to raise a child. Today, we have access to groups like the Intentional Parent, and we can utilize online resources and relationships to fill out where we lack real life connections. I do think real life connections are critical. They can't be replaced, but I'm a passionate believer that online connections can be a lifeline when you're parenting and feeling alone, or you're facing challenges that your friends and family and support network haven't experienced and can't help you with. It might be a tool to help you meet others and to form real relationships when you move or you have major life changes, or it might be a tool just to get you some online support when you need it. But whether you have a support system around you already or not, there's guaranteed a time where you'll need a little extra help. And it's out there waiting for you to ask for it. Coincidentally, a friend posted an article today in a mom's wellness group I'm in. It was a study published earlier this year in one of the US medical journals. The researchers studied what impact a mother's own support network makes on her children's brain development. Not the family, but the close friends that she has. They found that on average, mothers had 3.5 friends in their social support network. Moms who had more than that had kids who had higher cognitive test scores than moms who had fewer friends than average. The authors claimed that outside of family, Mothers with larger social networks have more emotional or more tangible support like babysitting or help running errands, and they have more access to information that in general just lessens the stress of parenting and improves parents' mental health. It's a small study, but it's interesting to see some research to back up what makes sense. That having a support system and a community is good for us parents, which of course is good for our children. So a little bit about my parenting journey. I grew up in the southern part of the US, mostly in small towns. And after university, I had the opportunity to work on 4 different continents and do a lot of travel and meet people all around the world. It's been fantastic. I've been incredibly lucky. I moved to Germany in my early 30s for what I thought would be a 1 or 2 year work assignment and a chance to see Europe. I was single, I had a good job, I spoke 0 German, but I had a sense of adventure and wanted to see where life would take me. Here I am 12 years later, I'm still in Germany, but now I'm a married stay-at-home mom to 2 girls who are 5 and 1. I went overnight from a high-pressure job in the finance industry to a stay-at-home mom to a daughter with Down syndrome who needed heart surgery. It was a huge change. I was not prepared for it. Not that you're ever prepared when you become a parent for the first time, but it was a huge change and almost overnight. But online communities were a lifeline to me in coping with all these changes. In addition to the normal first-time parenting challenges that everyone here knows, I had 3 additional challenges. First, living far away from family and close friends. Second, living in a foreign country. And third, learning what I needed to do to help our daughter with medical and regular development. First was living far away from my support system. I'm fortunate that I do have 2 parents and 2 supportive parents and some great friends and a huge network, but it's spread out among, too far a distance. My parents also have an active life of their own and their own community to support. Living in an international community is fabulous. There's so many benefits, but one of the drawbacks is people are always moving away. You make, a best friend and then 6 months later, oh, I'm moving, or my husband's moving, my wife's moving. You have to always keep making new friends. And it gets tiring sometimes, but it's worth it. At that point, when I became pregnant, I didn't have a lot of close friends who were still here. And I've been working so much that I really hadn't made a lot of new ones. The friends I did have here didn't have children. I had no clue. They had no clue. We had family and friends, but we didn't have anyone local or anyone that could physically help us out or that we could sit down with and get advice. Second, living in a foreign country. Both the language and the system were new to me. Even what I'd learned in Germany, didn't prepare me for being a parent here. And as a first-time parent, I had no idea how to do anything at all. I was worried everything I did was wrong. I certainly didn't know how to do it here where the culture was different. Even the things we did know, maybe were different here, or we didn't know the words for them or where to get them. Every question's just a little bit harder when you don't know the words. It was silly little things like where to buy a certain type of food or what's a substitute for a cooking ingredient in something you've cooked all your life but isn't available here. Or it might be dealing with bureaucracy or trying to understand the social rules of playground, because those apparently are different around the world as I'm learning. But everything's just a little more challenging, a little more stressful when you're trying to figure out how to do it in a new language, a new system. And when it's your children and your family and something so important, that added stress is a lot. And then finally, the third challenge was just figuring out how to help our daughter. Nothing we'd read about parenting really prepared us for that. When we found other parents, talked to, they didn't have the same challenges we did. We were researching doctors and procedures and hospitals and figuring out where to get therapy, where to go in the middle of the night when your child is sick. Does my daughter have a cold or does she have pneumonia? We had challenges that were different than what most of our friends had. We knew some people had similar challenges, but none nearby. Now today we're learning how to figure out the school system here to decide whether our daughter should go to mainstream school or special ed, whether to start her on time or wait a year. Everything, it's new to us. For all these challenges and the many more that were to come, online communities have been a lifesaver for me. I'm in way too many of them, to be perfectly honest, but they've been a really positive factor in my life. I actually met my husband through an online community, through a brunch that was organized through this local English-speaking community. It was more a chat board type of place before Facebook groups existed. And since then, I seem to keep adding more groups, both as a member and as leading them, because I can't stop myself from volunteering. When I got pregnant with our first daughter, I joined a coffee meetup with other moms-to-be, and we started meeting regularly after the babies were born. We added a stay-at-home dad or two who gave us a great other perspective. It gave me an instant group of friends and an instant group of people who were going through similar experiences and who just needed to get out and be around other people. We kept meeting regularly and added a few members. We lost some as people moved away or went back to work, but there are a few of us who still are here. We merged with the next round of people having babies, and we still try to meet as much as we can. You know, some of them have become close friends that I expect I'll know for the rest of my life. I found that through online communities, I could very quickly connect with a huge number of people who are in a similar stage of life that I was. Actually, making true friends and relationships takes time. You have to put in the work, and it just takes time to build relationships through shared experiences. But through online resources, you can very quickly connect to a large pool of potential friends. And sometimes, even if they're not going to be lifelong friends or best friends, it's nice to have other people to meet in person. We all need human contact. Even if they're not all the deepest relationships, it's nice to have someone to go out for a cup of coffee with. We found out a few months into my pregnancy that our daughter would have Down syndrome. I wasn't new to the idea. I volunteered with Special Olympics as a child. I actually worked for a camp for teens with Down syndrome, and my sister had cerebral palsy. So I had experience with children with Down syndrome, but I had no idea what it meant to have a child of my own, or what I should do with the information, or what health issues I should be ready for. So I went online, and generally that's not what I recommend to do, to Google any sort of medical condition, even though that's what we always do as the first step. Dr. Google gives you all the worst case scenario. So after that, I looked for parenting groups and blogs, and I found this wonderful group on baby center communities that was for moms who had a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. It had other moms who are currently pregnant with babies with Down syndrome, as well as moms who were more experienced and who'd already had their babies or had older children. And they could give us support or advice. More importantly, it was in my native language. At that point, I didn't really feel comfortable going into a German group and trying to express some really complicated emotions with my probably second or third grade vocabulary. I know there are groups here in Germany, but when you're not fluent in the language, it takes so much longer to read and write, and it's hard to express yourself when it's a really complicated, subtle, emotional subject. I found information that was helpful, and more importantly, I found people that I could just say, I'm scared to, and they could tell me, you know what, so was I. But most of the things I was scared of turned out to be okay. It will for you too, and I'm here to listen. You know, having those people really helped me get through those uncertain months when we were processing the diagnosis and worrying about what health issues she would have. When she was born, we found out she had a heart defect and needed open heart surgery in her first 6 months. My moms here in our babies group were incredibly supportive, but none of them had any experience with things like that. I didn't know anybody who did. So having people to go to online who got it or who had been through it already was such a big help. The next couple of years, she was in and out of the hospital with pneumonia or more surgery, and it was just so helpful to be able to connect with other people who understood. Even if they weren't in person, it just was nice to know you're not alone. You're not the first one to go through this. You know, they could tell you, here's what to expect. This is going to be really hard, but it's going to be okay. And it was, you know, also online, you can usually find someone anywhere in the world who's available whatever time of the night you're up. It's nice. There's always someone online. When something's different about your journey, especially when your child has medical issues or disabilities or some other challenges, or you do, this is where online groups may be a really great option for finding support. For me, it was helpful to talk to other moms further along in the journey than I was. I had so many fears just that she would even make it, and then what our lives would be like, that it made a difference to be able to see all the families with healthy, happy, older children, and to hear the parents talk about how they felt in the beginning, all the fear and the doubt and the emotions they had too, and see now how happy and confident and what advocates they were. It made me feel like, all right, things are gonna be okay. We can do this. On Wednesday, Lola already spoke about parenting a child with disability, and she shared this amazing poem, Welcome to Holland, which was one of the first things someone sent to me when we found out our daughter would have Down syndrome. If you haven't read it, Wendy posted it in the Intentional Parent group. Go read it. It explains things better than I ever could. It's just a perfect metaphor to express what it's like when you find out something's different about your child. For many of us, there's a period of grief when you find your child has a disability. Doesn't mean you don't love them, but there's a grief for losing the life that you had imagined. Your life in some ways probably will be far richer than you dreamed. You know, ours has been already, even in this short journey, but it will be different. And it takes time to adjust to that. And given all the emotions and things you're processing, sometimes it's easier to communicate those things in writing, or even anonymously if that's what you prefer. Online communities are perfect for this. I could get help any hour of the day. I didn't have to worry about whether I was gonna start crying in public and how I would look. And I was able to be totally open and honest with other moms, even though we weren't publicly ready to tell the world. Down syndrome and heart defects are pretty common around the world, but also for those who are dealing with more rare issues, online communities might be the only option to meet other families facing the same challenges. There just may not be anyone else in your city to meet with, or depending on the severity of the condition, you may not be able to travel far to attend conferences or some of the other things. That's where online really is a lifeline to some families. These days, there is an online community for virtually every medical situation or issue. Whatever you're going through, there's a group for you. There's a community, a chat room of people waiting to welcome you, to give you advice, or to just let you vent and let you know that you're not alone. And that can make all the difference for some people. We joke a little bit that these clubs are like the clubs you never wanted to join, but it turns out to be the best ones in your life. My older daughter, Catherine, is now almost 6, and we seem to have made it through the worst of medical issues. She's off to a good start. After a few very difficult years of trying, she now has a 1-year-old sister. I'm more comfortable here. I have a pretty good support system, and I've made some close friends, many of whom I met directly or indirectly through online groups. But most of them I went and met in person. Just before her 3rd birthday, so about 3 years ago, we spent another 2 weeks in the hospital because Catherine needed surgery to repair her sternum because it hadn't healed properly from previous heart surgeries. I remember in the last few days, I was sitting in the hospital with her. Another lady posted this beautiful, heartfelt message on a local parenting group. It was a parenting group more for an online community and sharing information, not one that had meetups or any in-person connections. But she shared this post about how lonely she was, how she'd, very quickly gone to suddenly having 2 kids and being a stay-at-home mom. And she just felt like she hadn't left her house in 2 years and wanted to make some mom friends. It was a beautiful post, and so many people responded to it. And at that moment, I sat in the hospital room, and I just saw how many women responded and said, me too. I've always been afraid to say how lonely I am, but I'm lonely and I feel that way too. Let's meet. I said to myself, I need to help form this group. I contacted the woman who had posted and started gathering a group because she probably had 200 people respond saying, I feel that way too. I want to make friends. And I volunteered to help start it up. And today I now co-lead this English-speaking group for women living in Munich, Germany. Our purpose is exactly that, to help women build their village here. They're from all over. Some are German. Some are German and want to practice their English or just have international friends. Others have lived abroad and don't feel like they belong now that they've moved back home, or they're from other parts of the country. And we have a lot of women from all around the world for whom their English feels more comfortable than their German. I would say the majority are not native English speakers, but it's a common bond that we all have, and it's easier for us to communicate. It's a wonderful international group. But our purpose is to help people build a village, because many of us don't have one here. We use technology to help create real life connections, not to make an online community, but to help us build a real, true community and relationships and knowing each other. So living in the area is a condition to membership in our group. Obviously, the majority of the interaction is online because we're women, and many of whom are moms, and on mobile devices really the only way people have time anymore to talk online. A lot of information sharing and just tips on how to do things here. But we've been able to connect a lot of people, to make new friendships, to get out, to get to know the city. We have a babysitting circle where we trade babysitting services. There's a website that manages this where you can trade credits and book times. And one of the things I'm most proud of, that we have a meal train to set up that helps anybody who's sick or has a new baby or otherwise is in need. It gives the people a place to say, I need help, or even if they're not a member of the group, my neighbor needs help, and to get it. Even if they don't have friends and family nearby, or they're new in town and don't know anybody, you can still get help. When I was first pregnant, and all the times Catherine was in the hospital before this group started, I didn't really have friends who could help out. I had friends who were willing, but most of them also had small children and no childcare, so they couldn't come to the hospital with children or bring food, or we're all in the same. I remember how much I appreciated the one friend who had an older child who did visit us multiple times and brought snacks. It was just nice to see someone. That's one of the challenges when you all have the same stage of life. You have the same challenges, and so it's hard to help each other out because you're all struggling at the same time with the same things. But having a wider community of people where people are in different stages of life, some need help, some are able to help out, that makes all the difference. Now we post on our group when someone needs help, they need a sitter, they need meals, children's clothes, advice, whatever. We have so many offers of help, often from people who've never met in person. When my second was born last year, my husband had to travel abroad for a week. I was 2 weeks post C-section with 2 kids, and my mom was visiting but was sick. Ladies from our group brought us dinner every day for a week. And it may seem small that each person bringing a meal, but it made all the difference in me coping with life that week. I barely kept my sanity, but I wouldn't have without that help. And that's the power of community. That's what we can do when we use these tools to build our village. We also offer the ability to post questions anonymously when it makes sense. You can obviously do this on the internet with profiles, but it's harder in a Facebook group. Anonymity can encourage people to reach out when otherwise they're afraid or they're just too deep in their struggles to reach out publicly. We've had ladies facing serious postpartum depression or other mental illnesses reach out, and we're able to connect them to resources and to other women who've been through it. One woman who was pregnant from an abusive husband reached out for advice, and another member who had no connection to her offered to anonymously pay for her consultation with an attorney to help her out. And the first step in saying you need help is usually the hardest, and anonymity can make people feel strong enough to take that first step and get the help they need. Now, those are just some examples from our little village that we've built. I'm not unique here. Our group is not unique. More and more of us around the world are living further from family, or we don't have family who can regularly help out. There are many reasons for it. We have children later in life, and our parents are older. We move for work, we move for love, we move for a safer place to live. There are a lot of reasons, or we don't have parents around. The result's the same, that we don't have this lifelong network that our parents or grandparents did, or that we thought we might. So we build it for ourselves today because it's out there for the asking. My parents didn't have their parents to turn to for advice when they had children, but they built relationships and their own village every time we moved. And I remember for us, it was primarily through churches. The churches were the major source of our community. There were families from church who helped with meals or childcare. There was an elderly couple who I always stayed with when I was sick and couldn't go to school, but my parents still needed to work. You know, friends who passed on kids' clothes, and people who acted like grandparents to me when I didn't have grandparents. Today, now it's my parents doing this, but it's really the kindness of the community that's made our lives possible. I think we all know how social media and internet has so many risks for us as parents, not only from the perspective of our children's development and safety, but also for being truly present in our kids' lives and for our own mental health. I'm an American sitting here in Europe speaking at a global conference organized by a parenting group founded in Africa. Amazing. Our world is better connected today than ever, and we have every piece of information at our fingertips. But at the same time, many of us feel more isolated than ever. In addition, the effect of too much screen time, instant gratification has on us and our kids, and how we lose the ability to read social cues when everything's just through writing and chatting and text speak. Our relationships can be more about the number of friends we have rather than true, meaningful relationships. And instead of comparing ourselves to neighbors or coworkers, today we're comparing ourselves to a million different strangers and celebrities' curated feeds. You know, people showing a false best impression of themselves to the world. It's hard not to feel like we don't measure up when we compare ourselves to the perfect Pinterest mom or the photoshopped Instagram star. Now, that's all out there. All the things that we talk about here that we can do for our kids, like trying to be aware of the negative influences online and that we need to connect with our kids to effectively parent, we need to do it for ourselves too. It's not just something that our children need, it's something that all humans need, including us. We so often put our own needs aside when we're focused on our children. And this is where, to me, a community is different than just internet or social media. Social media is a tool. It can be used positively or it can be used negatively. And when it's used positively, it can be a powerful force at improving our lives and also at helping others. I don't recommend using online communities to replace in-person interaction, but to facilitate it and to bridge gaps where you may not have something local in person, or you may need something for a short time. The 4 main ways this works is it allows you to connect with a large number of people. It lets you quickly find and share information. It helps you feel less isolated, and anonymity can help you reach out for help. We're all here because we're in the intentional parent group or in other groups, or we know one of the speakers. And obviously we're all on Facebook or YouTube if we're watching this. So there's a good chance you're already using online tools to build or to round out your village. If not, if you're struggling with anything or you just feel lonely, reach out. Join a community or 5 or 10 or 50. If you're shy or afraid to post, you can lurk until you're ready to be active. You can post or join an event or comment on something to start. You usually can message an admin, or you can say, hey, I'm new here. I don't know anyone, but I'd love to come. People will welcome you. People respond so positively to personal stories. People respond to vulnerability because they identify with it. Because most of us deep down feel that way. Some of us are just more open about it. I can tell you for every post that I see with, hey, I'm really struggling with this, there will be 10 people who reply, me too. I thought I was the only one. Hey, let's talk. And there are probably 20 more who think the same but are afraid to post. If you're already pretty settled and you have a wonderful support system, join anyway. You can always be part of a group and meet some amazing new people. And you can be part of a village. We all need help sometimes. We all need a safe place to say, this is really hard. And we all need to connect. Everything that we talk about to connect with our children, to help us be more effective parents, we need to do that for ourselves too. We need connections, we need support to be the best parents. We need in-person connections, but we can use online communities to do that. For me, it's really been a lifesaver as someone living far from family, and also in dealing with all the medical issues that our first daughter had. It's really changed my perspective, and it's made things manageable, made things easy is not the right word, but it could have been a lot more difficult. communities have really been a lifesaver on my parenting journey. And I hope that the same will be true for some of you. I'd be happy to take any questions if you just type them into the comments. I'm a pretty open book and will answer just about anything. Let me scroll through. Let's see. Hi, everybody. Wendy, I love the summaries you're making. Okay, catching up with the comments. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask or anything to add? If not, we can wrap it up. I'm really thankful to have this opportunity. I met Wendy through an online community, and it's just been fantastic getting to hear new perspectives. A couple of the talks on this have been very helpful to me, especially the ADHD one. I've got lots of food for thought. So if no one has anything, then we can go ahead and wrap it up. Yeah. Thanks, and hope everybody has a, oh, sorry, I see Wendy has a question. How do I manage parenting a child with Down syndrome? Trying to have a very good sense of humor sometimes. Patience. I'd say the two key things are patience, and really you have to let go of all the preconceived notions you had of what a person's, how to measure a person's value, or what your child needs to do. Now, patience, just your child will, every parent needs that, but with kids with Down syndrome, there is a very wide spectrum of how kids behave or what challenges they have. But one common thing is difficulty with impulse control, and also just global delays in learning, in speaking, in walking. So you have to have patience, and you have to trust that your kid will do your kid will do almost everything, but on their own time. And you can't, stubbornness, you can't force it. My daughter walked when she was 26 months. The therapists were saying for 6 months, there's no reason she can't walk. Everything seems working and strong enough, but she just waited until one day she wanted to. One day she stood up, and 2 days later she walked and hasn't stopped. And the second part of letting go of all the preconceived notions that you have. You know, my husband and I are fortunate. Both my parents are teachers. My father grew up in an orphanage. His parents died when he was young. My mother, also worked her way through school, and they both became teachers and administrators. And in my family, education was very important. My parents sacrificed a lot to make sure I went to the best schools, to make sure I was able to go to whatever university I wanted to. My husband also was one of the first in his family to go to college, went to an excellent university, has 2 masters. So for people who were raised that way, of course you assume your kid's going to go to a top college. But it's almost been liberating for us when our daughter was born that, all right, she might not go to Harvard. She probably won't go to Harvard, and it's okay. Now, what matters is not where she goes to school or what diploma she has or what job she has or how much money she makes. What matters to us and what will determine whether we're good parents or not is finding something that makes her happy, finding something that will fulfill her, finding something she wants to get up every morning and do, and whatever her potential is, making sure she reaches it. Now, hopefully she may or may not live independently. She may need some help. But whatever her potential is, our job is to help her reach it, and also just to make sure she has something that she's happy with. And it's really been liberating. Then we have a second child come along who, you know, you never know with your child, but she seems really clever. She seems smart, doing things early. And you sometimes catch yourself falling back on the same trap. But because we have Catherine, it's opened our minds that it's not this rat race where you have to get this degree and you have to have this job and you have to be the top and everything. Maybe it matters more that you have a good life and you're happy. I would say that change in mindset has been huge. It was hard at first, but it's been wonderfully liberating. And it's been great. I hope it works out well for our children. I think it'll be good for both of them not to be putting so much pressure on what the results have to be, but more on the journey. Let's see. It definitely gets overwhelming sometimes. Although I think anybody with 2 children or 1 child, or I hear 3 children is really difficult, is overwhelming. I try to manage just, talking to my partner, talking to my husband. We try, also just to acknowledge that it's hard sometimes. And it really helps to be able to talk to people who are going through it too and say, it's not all unicorns and rainbows every day. I love my daughter. I love who she is, but sometimes it's hard. And just letting yourself acknowledge that makes a huge difference. You don't have to always put on a happy face for the world. Like many of us feel like we have to be advocates all the time. You can say it's hard. It's overwhelming. I need a break, and I don't get one. It's tough. I see the question below that, Oyanada. How can I relate with my daughter who's not loving? She's 11 and doesn't show love. I've read my daughter can't say I love you. Sometimes I feel like she shows it, but kids with Down syndrome it's a bit of a stereotype, but many are more open and loving. But I hear from a lot of parents whose children are autistic, that's a struggle. And I would say, first of all, you have to remind yourself that whether they can say it or not, or show it or not, your kids do love you. It hurts when you see all the Mother's and Father's Day cards of people saying, their kids writing, "Mommy, I love you," and your kids never said it. It's hard. Hopefully the day will come for all of us when that happens, and it will be so amazing. The fact that you waited so long and fought and helped them get there will make it worth it. But don't forget that it's not that your child doesn't love you. It's not that she doesn't love you. It's just that she can't express it. Or I don't know her, but look for other ways. There are a lot of ways, even neurotypical people, there are a lot of different ways people show love. Some people show love by giving things. Some people say it. Some people demonstrate it in other ways. Look around, see if there's some different ways, some non-standard ways. Let's see. Some questions. Yes, exactly, the love languages. It's probably a little, I'm not sure if there is one written about children. He definitely should write one about non-neurotypical people, because that would be fascinating and helpful, because there probably are ways that kids, if your kid digs up an earthworm, sometimes your dog brings you a dead chipmunk or something that does not seem like a nice gift, or your cat leaves a rat on your doorstep. That's them showing love. It's not what you might want, but it actually is demonstrating that you matter. Are there any other questions or things people want to add? Let's make sure I didn't miss anything. Well, thank you everybody for joining and for the questions. Thanks, Wendy, for having me. And I'm looking forward to watching a few more. I hope everybody else has a good journey. Thanks and have a good weekend.